Everyone. Welcome to the Buddhist Recovery Network Academy, our first show of the new year. We wish you all a happy new year. I'm Robin Smith, and today's Academy teaching is by Caroline Brazier on greed, hatred, and delusion, a Buddhist theory of everything. Just to tell you a little bit about our teacher today, Caroline Brazier is a therapist, a writer, and a trainer, and her work focuses on Buddhist approaches to mental health. She's the author of 7 books on Buddhism, psychotherapy, and ecotherapy. She takes a holistic view of compulsive and addictive processes, underpinned by the core teachings on our human condition, and offers positive and practical ways to work with them. So without further ado, Caroline, I see you're here with us, so I'm going to give it to you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Robin.
Thank
That's
you.
great. I'm just going to move myself off the screen so I'm not looking at myself. Okay, so very good to be with you today. I'd like to start this, as I've been invited to, by inviting a period of meditation. So if you'd like to, wherever you are, find a comfortable place to be, probably sitting, maybe lying down, whatever's comfortable for you. And I'd like you to just take some time to just go into your body sense and feel the seat beneath you or the ground beneath you, whatever you're in contact with. Okay. So focus your attention of the part of you that is actually touching something solid. And if you're sitting on a chair, feel the bit of you that's on the seat of the chair. Feel your feet on the ground, if they're touching the ground. If you're lying down, feel your back or your side and on the floor. And just take a few minutes to just experience that solidity there. Notice the degree to which your body allows yourself to be in contact with the chair or the floor, or whatever you're on. Breathe out slowly. And feel both the connection and the resistance to connection. This is the edge around which we work in Buddhist psychology. The edge between connecting with the world and our resistance to connecting with the world. This is the nub of what life is about. How can we connect? How can we trust? In Buddhist terms, how can we take refuge? How can we have confidence? How can we feel that we're held? Breathe out. Allow yourself to be held. Allow yourself to feel that ground beneath you solid. Allow yourself to feel that beneath you is the chair, is the soil of the earth, is the planet. And the planet has its place in the universe. Feel that deep connection. Breathe and enjoy it. And I'm going to talk today about Buddhist psychology. I'd particularly like to draw on some of the core ideas of Buddhism that I think provide us with some good guidelines in terms of how we can feel more alive and more connected with the world. Buddhist psychology suggests that we're all in different degrees caught up in patterns of thought and action which are driven by fear and compulsions. Under the pressure of life, we tend to grasp at things which bring us comfort or distraction at all sorts of levels. These patterns are basically an addictive process. For some people, this is more obvious than for others. Some people, these patterns are kind of normative. They conform to what society wants. They live ordinary lives. You know, they go to work, they have families, they watch television. But in a way, they're following the tracks which keep them safe mentally, physically, and socially. For other people, these patterns become all-consuming and problematic. But all of us are restricted by these patterns of behaviour and thought, because they limit our potential and they blinker us to ourselves. They cut us off from real contact with the world and with other people. So the nub of the Buddhist teaching is that most of us avoid things that we fear through processes of distraction. And we live in a world of not seeing things, or avidya. This is the Sanskrit word, avidya, not seeing. We live in a state of delusion. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the sort of underlying theory of this and hopefully give you some pointers for working with it. We only have a very limited time today, but I'd like to at least give you some idea of how this fits together as a model that can be practical and that give you ways of thinking about your life. When we look at the Buddhist teachings, you know, and I'm drawing here on very basic Buddhist teachings like the Four Noble Truths, like dependent origination. In the Second Noble Truth, we hear about the business of attachment, the way that we cling onto objects, the way that as we are frightened of the existential difficulties of our lives, with things like sickness, old age, death, disappointment, loss, all of these things that trouble us, we tend to grasp onto things. And this grasping process is described in three levels. The truth of clinging is basically initially that we cling through our senses. The first level of the process of fighting the fear, of moving away from the fear, is that of sense attachment. So what tends to happen is that as we go through our lives, whenever we encounter something that's a little bit different, a little bit strange, what we tend to do is we tend to grasp onto things through our senses. We're all the time at an unconscious level, or even at a conscious level, looking around us for things that can distract us, things that we can latch onto. We say that our whole psychology is object related because our senses are always driving towards objects. And, you know, this can be very simple. This can be things like ideas, like we get hooked into an idea of something. It can be things like the way we decorate our houses, the clothes we wear, the jobs we take, the people we associate with. It can be all those things. These are all objects out of which we construct our world. And so, you know, it can take this form. And we have different relationships with these objects. Some of these objects we grasp at, we want, we hold on to, so we surround ourselves with the things that we like. Other things we define ourselves as different from, so we reject them, we dislike them. We say I'm this, but I'm not that. And this is the idea of what we call the three poisons: greed, hate, and delusion. So our relations to the world is all constructed within these three modes of interacting, these three modes of reaction. That either we're grasping at things, or we're pushing things away, or we're caught in some kind of a confusion of the two. And we're we're basically caught between these different sense attractions. And we go through a kind of cycle where, on the one hand, we see things, we grasp at things, but then as we grasp at them, we react to them. And in reacting to them, we fit them into some sort of a story and a pattern. And through this process, we see, we grasp, we identify with it, we create a story with it, and then we go out and we look for more things that reinforce this story. And so through this initial kind of sense reaction, we start to build up this kind of cycle of relationship with the world, so that we're constantly surrounding ourselves with things which are familiar and comfortable, and we're pushing away things that we disassociate with, we don't like, we reject in different ways. And we're living in this kind of bubble of, this is me, this is like me, this is mine, these are mine, these are like me, these are familiar, these kinds of reactions to things, and creating a skin against, these are not me, these I don't want, this has nothing to do with me. And we're living in this kind of relationship between the two. And out of this bubble, we create what we think of as our sense of self. This is basically an attempt to create a kind of sense of certainty, permanence, familiarity in a world that is constantly throwing at us new surprises, uncomfortable things, the edges of what we don't know, the discomfort of life. And so most of the time we go around protected in this world of delusion. Most of the time we build up these barriers against our fears. And then at some point we end up feeling that we're secure. We settle into our lives. And maybe the patterns that we built up, as I say, are convenient, they're comfortable, they work for us. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're actually problematic. Maybe they're actually things that cause us a lot of distress. But either way, they're limitations on our lives. Most of us exist at this level. But then sometimes this ceases to work for people. Sometimes the objects that they rely on are destroyed for some reason. You know, maybe they create their identity around a job, and when the job goes, maybe they create their identity around living in a particular area, and for some reason they have to move. Maybe it's around a relationship, and that person dies or goes away or whatever it is. Those points, there's a kind of crisis point. Those points, there's a kind of opening up of that bubble that people have created around themselves of security. At those points, things can go either way. You know, in the open sense, we may open up and we may see new things in life. We may find new possibilities. And often these crisis points can be points of really positive transformation. But equally, these crisis points can be the point where we kind of give up at a spiritual level. And we move on to the third stage. We move on to the stage of oblivion. So these are like the three levels that are talked about in the teaching on the second level truth. The level of sense attachment, the level of becoming, the creation of the bubble, and the level of non-becoming, the sinking away into oblivion, losing ourselves, and so on. So, you know, this in a nutshell is the structure of ideas in Buddhist psychology. We create this illusion of permanence for ourselves. We create this bubble around ourselves. And the problem is that it limits us, it insulates us, it cuts us off from things. So Buddhist practice and Buddhist psychology is all directed towards how can we break out of this trap of self-delusion that we create. On the one hand, we can see that it creates a certain level of being able to live in the world, being able to function. So at some levels, it's helpful, and at an ordinary kind of level, it's enabling. But we can do better than that. We can actually move out of that into something that's more alive, more free, something where we're really connecting to others. So I want to just, before I finish talking, just to give you some thoughts, and just these are very brief thoughts, about, what are the ways out of this trap that all of us find ourselves in, whether it's a deeply addictive process or whether it's the ordinary, mundane boringness of daily life. How do we get out of this bubble that we've created for ourselves? Well, Buddhism gives us several pointers. First of all of you will be familiar with the teachings on mindfulness. One can't exist in the world today without hearing mindfulness somewhere. Mindfulness is about stopping and connecting. It's about being aware. It's about bringing that special attention to the experience of the moment. So mindfulness is one practice that can be very helpful. I work taking people out into nature and going outdoors. This is also something that can be very good in this sense, to take our mindfulness outdoors, to connect with things that are growing. And this is important on many levels. The Buddha's journey started with him going out into the forest, going out and connecting with the trees and with the practice. He was enlightened sitting under the Bodhi tree. He felt the ground beneath him. He touched the earth as witness. He was aware of that deep connection to the soil. And so I think going out and walking in nature, bringing that mindful attention into it, this is really important. And I think it makes us aware that these little worlds that we create for ourselves are not the whole story, that actually we're part of a much bigger system. I think a lot of the fear we carry these days are to do with not just our own personal mortality, but also the great threats that are out there in the whole global situation. And so, how do we connect with that? And I think going out and connecting with nature, realize that we're part of a greater system, we're part of the ecosystem. This is an important aspect. And then there are practices that are about connection, about recognizing our connection, recognizing our dependence, refuge practices, practices of gratitude, living more simply, recognizing our ordinariness. All of these things, we live so much of our lives trying to pretend to be something that we're not. And it puts a heck of a pressure on us. We need to let go and come back to our ordinariness. I'm aware that our time is short, as I say, and I'd like to leave some time for some questions. I'd like to leave you really with the thought, though, of the connection that you have with all that's around you. So coming back to our meditation where we started, I invited you to be aware of sitting on the chair or the floor and to feel the solidity of what it is that you rely on. This is the most fundamental practice of Buddhism. This is the practice of refuge. So noticing, how much do I trust? How solid is the ground beneath me? How much do I appreciate that solidness? And how much do I resist it? How much is my whole being shrinking away from connection? And can I do something about it? Okay, I shall leave things there. Thank you very much. And I'm open to questions, comments. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to let folks know that there is an icon on the lower right-hand side of your screen in the chat area. If you'd like to come on live to turn your video on and actually pose your question in person, just click that icon so I'll know that you'd like to do that. Thank you. And if questions don't arise immediately, we'll just sit in a period of reflection.
I guess I'd like to know a little bit about who's listening. if anyone wants to say anything about themselves and, you know, maybe what brought them here. You know, are there questions arising from that you'd like to share?
You're welcome to type where you're tuning in from into the chat field as well, so that you can see where the group is from. I'll start. I'm tuning in from New Orleans, Louisiana, and I was just telling Caroline that it's the beginning of Mardi Gras. So it's the season of festivity here, and I'm very enthusiastic about staying grounded during this season. It's really easy to get carried away, and I love this online sangha that I can come back to. So we do have derived, who is tuning in from Montreal. We've over 1 year from a variety of chemicals and processes using the Refuge Recovery Program. Thank you very much.
Ah, yes, thank you. That's good to hear from you. Montreal, it must be pretty cold there at the moment. Yeah. Yeah. And I think the whole process of recognizing change in oneself and recognizing how one's finding new places of refuge, you know, this is so important. I mean, a program like this, you know, I think it can become a real positive anchor for ourselves. And it's important to talk in terms of sort of stepping stones, if you like. I mean, Thich Nhat Hanh talks in terms of watering good seeds as a practice. You know, you can kind of sometimes get the impression when you look at Buddhist teachings that one's supposed to just kind of become instantly enlightened or something. But one of the things that Thich Nhat Hanh talks a lot about is that, you know, you need to actually have practices that support the positive seeds within oneself, that we all have the potential for going in different directions. We all have the different karmic seeds within us, and they can take us off into the old patterns, the addictive patterns and so on, or they can take us in the healthy direction of recovery. But they're all seeds, they're all habit patterns that we can think in terms of positive or negative habit patterns. And these habit patterns have kind of objects that are associated with them. And a program like this, I think, can become an object. So, you know, it's really important that we feel that we've got things that can anchor us in the positive direction that we're going in, and things that can anchor that calm state of mind that we're looking to. Anyone else out there?
I don't know how to speak. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. I'm Polly. I'm from England, from Ipswich, Felixstowe, actually, by the sea.
All right. Hi. You're not so far away, Polly.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was really nice to hear an English voice. Yeah, really, really nice to hear what you were saying. I'm really struggling with my recovery at the moment. And I think what stood out for me was about refuge and how I need to trust that there is a network that can help me and support me. Like my issues, like I went to a boarding school, and I think that's where my sort of issues, trust issues come from. And I'm trying to work a 12-step program, but relapse keeps getting in the way. And really, I love the Buddhist. I've been accessing the Buddhist Center as well over many years. And I think I haven't been putting in enough trust, basically, that I'm going to be able to, that is going to be able to carry me through this massive change. You know, I've been using drugs for my whole adult life, and I'm really struggling with the change.
Yeah.
Well,
and I think, you know, there are many levels of refuge as well. You know, I think the sort of human relationships are vitally important. Saying about having been at boarding school, I think, you know, often they've been disrupted, and there's some repairing that needs to happen around human relationships. But I think there's also a sort of bigger level, you know, there's the level of refuge in a group. You know, sometimes we trust an individual, but sometimes it feels more easy to trust a whole group of people than just one person.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and then there's, you know, there are other things, and I think it's a very personal thing what we discover our trust in, you know, looking at the kind of, what do we trust spiritually? You know, what does it mean to us? What do we trust in terms of life, in terms of the world? What do we trust in terms of ideas and so on? And so I think that journey of what do I trust, really important and vital in recovery, really, to find different sources of trust.
Definitely, because there's so many aspects to my life. I'm a single mother. You know, I have different projects. I've had different people in my life. There's so many aspects to my life, and each one I have to find areas that are safe for me, and safe for my son, and safe to change, and we attach to different things, don't we? I don't define myself as a drug addict, but it is my biggest problem, you know. My whole life is, you know, I wouldn't say my whole day is taken up by using drugs, but it does affect my whole life, you know.
Yes. Well, it's like, you know, when something like that takes over, it does. It takes over all your thinking time and it is hard to make space for other things. But it is finding those spaces for other things. And I think the other thing to bear in mind is that, you know, a lot of these, it's like our mind states depend on conditions. And, you know, I was talking about the way that our minds are conditioned by different sense objects. If you can put yourselves into a different set of conditions, then sometimes that can completely alter your mind state. You know, I don't know if you've experienced this, but, you know, you go and visit somebody, you know, maybe a relative or maybe an old friend or something, and because you go and see somebody who you've known from years ago, suddenly your mind kind of shifts into how it was then, and you suddenly start remembering things from back then or whatever, or you find yourself acting in a different way, or like people find their work acting differently at work to at home or whatever. So we're very susceptible to the conditions we surround ourselves with. So I think this is another reason I like working outdoors, is because when you take people outdoors, just that fact of shifting the conditions and putting yourself outdoors into nature, it shifts the mind state somehow. So I think this is another way of kind of looking at it. You know, look at what you can take refuge in, but also look at finding different sets of conditions so that they maybe kind of bounce you out of that addictive mind state pattern that you might otherwise fall into. I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of that was what I was trying to get at. There's so many influences, and you know, like with parenting is a big thing. There's conditions that my past, my background puts on me that I can't always attain. And when I'm in a good space, I've carved out my own way of doing things and telling myself that that's okay, that we're reaching our potential, and it's an ongoing practice. And I can't be like those other people because I'm not those other people, you know. And so, like you're saying, and being out in nature, being in an office is someone else's identity, if you like. It's somebody else's environment, whereas being out in nature, it's its own identity. You bring your own conditions and identity and colour to it, if you like.
Yes,
And that's why it works so well.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's very true. You know.
Yeah, really good listening. Thank you.
Yeah. Just reading Marissa's, is it Marissa or Marissa? Anyway, I'm reading your contribution from Canada again. And you'd like to talk about resistance to practice, even when I know the benefits. It's not your current struggle. I think it's the current struggle of many people. I think there's several things I'd like to say about this from the Buddhist psychology point of view. I think, first of all, you know, sometimes we put artificial pressure on ourselves because we feel we should be something that we're not. And I mean, in some ways, this is something I was thinking when Polly was talking as well. You know, sometimes we just need to recognize that, you know, we're not feeling able to do something. We're not good at whatever it is. You know, not buying into that kind of idea that we should somehow be attaining a certain level, we should be conforming to a certain standard and so on. So, you know, sometimes you have to almost sort of hit rock bottom. I mean, I practice Pure Land Buddhism, and in Pure Land Buddhism there's quite a lot of emphasis on not thinking that we're enlightened, not imagining ourselves to be there, and just recognizing that actually we're human beings, and we're pretty messy as human beings. And so I think one level of recognizing this is just to say, hey, you know, I don't feel like practicing today, and acknowledging that to ourselves and recognizing that this is actually how we are today, so that we take the pressure off. And then often what happens is that, you know, humans are very sort of contradictory, that actually when we take that pressure off and we say, actually, I don't have to do it, then actually that bit of us that wants to do it springs into action, and we find that we are doing something. So I think that's the first thing, is I would take the pressure off, just recognize that actually you're not wanting to do it, and then allowing that voice that wants to do it to emerge in its own way. But then I'd also say, you know, look at types of practice. You know, it doesn't have to be a straitjacket. And, you know, practice should be something joyful. So what is it that makes you joyful? And, you know, I think we know the difference between that kind of spiritual joy that comes from practice and the joy or the enjoyment that comes from just getting off our heads or whatever. So, you know, what is it that brings joy to you? And if bringing joy to you is looking at a sunset, or walking in the garden, listening to the birds, or watching the snow outside, or sitting in the shrine room, just letting your mind drift, looking at the Buddha, lighting a candle, you know, whatever it is, whatever kind of brings that joy to life, you know, I would say, make that your practice. Don't get into the resistance. Just do what brings you alive and brings that joy into you. And gently you'll find that will ease you into a more solid, connected kind of practice. But everyone has periods of fallowness, periods of enthusiasm. Let yourself go on the road that your faith takes you. You know, it's not being driven by you. It's not an ego thing. It's something that will draw you. So let your practice you. Don't try and force it. I think this would be my suggestion here. But, you know, talk to your teachers, because, you know, you're all practicing in different centres and so on. So they'll have their own ideas about this, and they'll probably have much wiser advice than I have. But from my experience, I would say, don't push it. Go with it. Find that spiritual sense in yourself, and just try and sit in the peace and the joy of that when you can, in whatever way you can.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Thank you for sharing the warmth and the practicality of the Dharma with us today. So just to remind everyone that if you'd like to give Donna, I will put the link up one more time. Yeah, it's a really practical way to share your gratitude and your metta. And just be sure to indicate that it's for the Academy. And I wanted to invite you back for the first Sunday of next month. That's February 3rd. And Vimalasara Mason John will be speaking. So we welcome you to join us. She's also originally from the UK, so you'll hear that more familiar accent. And she's a really great teacher and is the president of the Buddhist Recovery Network here. And maybe we'll be able to share some current news about where the summit that's coming. I'm going to suggest that to her, so you can stay connected. Really appreciate your presence here today. Yeah, have a lovely week and a very, very happy New Year. I hope it's full of beneficial change. Thank you very much. I'll leave the room open in case anyone needs to copy anything from the screen. All right. Thanks so much. Have a great one.
Thanks very much.
Bye.